I got to hear your response, and just when you preach the gospel to people, to tell them that there's nothing more that we have. And it's not that there's anything less about the gospel, but it is what you need. What do you say?
Well, so many people that you meet, especially in New York City, have really achieved a level of excellence that they've dreamed of. I mean, many people come here to make it. They come here because they're a great singer, they're a great actor, they're at the top of their class at Harvard or Yale or any of the big schools. They end up in New York City. And we come, all of us, with that sense of, well, when I finally get there, it's going to satisfy that longing of my heart. And then we all know it's empty. I mean, success is wonderful when God gives it and when God brings it. A blessing of the Lord maketh rich and adds no sorrow to it. But if it's not the blessing of the Lord, if He's no part of the blessing, you're left empty. And so one of the things I've loved as I've engaged in the culture and is just simply asking people, some of the brightest, most successful, most beautiful, talented people, is this working for you? Is what you've chosen, your lifestyle, your riches, your weekend home in the Hamptons, your designer shoes, which I love too, but I know that there's more than designer shoes. You know, all those questions. So our message of the gospel is that you can have it all, but with Jesus, you can enjoy it all. You can love your life. You can live it to the fullest. And it's a message they're waiting for.
You know, the symbol of the Christian faith is a cross. And though it's decorated, and sometimes people whose lifestyles are antithetical to the cross of what Christianity represents seem to be fascinated by it. But the cross really stands, as A.W. Tozer said, for the abrupt, violent end of a life. It's the thought of that the greatest man in the world, who all of the miracles and all the things he did, and yet why would he come to this moment of death? He wasn't murdered. It wasn't as if that it was some tragedy. Oh, in that sense, he said, I'm going to go do this. In fact, people tried to stop him from doing it, and he said, get behind me, Satan, because this is the reason I was born. And when people talk about, well, Jesus is one of many gods among the pantheon of gods, there must be a multitude of ways. On the campuses and in the academic circles, it's called postmodern. And it's this ethos that somehow that everybody's equally right. I remember sitting in one of the delis, Carnegie Deli, here, and some network executives were there, and another guy talking, and the discussion came about, and the concept of all religions are the same. And it was, wait a minute, the God of the religion that told people in their minds to come here and kill people is not the same God that told us to get on an airplane and come in here and help people. We're talking about two totally different ideologies, two totally different worldviews, and this is the amazing thing about the gospel is that God has, it's not about us reaching up to God. The gospel is God came to us,
so true.
Reached to us. And as we've talked about Jesus, as we've talked about the fact, in fact, Jesus at the cross, if there would have been another way, he said, Father, if there is another way, that's the mystery of him being fully God, but yet in his humanity, knowing the suffering he would have to go through, and yet there was no other way. If there was another way, God would have not allowed the greatest human that ever lived to suffer and be brutalized like that if there had been another philosophy, another way. And so the miracle is not that the intellectual problem is not that there's only one way. The miracle is that there's any way.
Yeah.
Yes.
That how can a holy, righteous God love us and accept us? And I think that's the joy as we've got Christmas trees up here of Christmas. It's the real message. Why don't you just, maybe you guys can just tag team here in your own, and just talk about it, and then just, in the end, pray. Because there's millions of people watching around the world that say, you know what, I realize that I know about him up here, but I want to receive him in my heart and be changed.
Well, one of the things I find a lot of people have this misconception, especially in a secular environment, who don't have a lot of background in religion or Christianity, this sense of, well, if I become committed to this, I have to give up everything I am. I'm going to be sent to Africa, I'm going to be sent somewhere else to ask to become something I'm not. And what I love about the gospel is that as we lay down our lives, we find that fullness of everything I was ever created to be. Whether I'm in business or any of the cultural centers of influence that are right here in New York City. I mean, isn't that what we want in our nation, is cultural transformation? Not that we all shut down those industries and go serve in the church, but that we bring the church to those industries, that as we're transformed by the gospel, now I can go sit in the same boardrooms, make the decisions about fashion and all the cultural trends that are going on, and actually influence people for the sake of the gospel, being fully who I am, not because I've had to change, but because I've really become what God's called me to be.
Yeah. And
Ron, after you talk, just pray for people. Just sit there and pray, because I know people need to receive this.
you know.